Welcome to Prime Suspects, starring Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr. Today's topics: the weekend that was for Prime, a streak of better-friendly results and whether that's a bad thing for the books, and a couple of divergent predictions for the sweepstakes betting landscape in 2025. Diving into the latest from inside Prime Sports, Adam, last week at this time, you described the recent run on your end as a bloodbath. How did you fare this week in the college football playoff semifinals, as well as wildcard weekend in the NFL?
A good recovery. Actually, both states were green last week, which I'm not sure it's ever happened. I'd have to go looking back and look in the history books. The college game was good. The Notre Dame won. Ohio State, not so much. Would have been nice to have not had those couple of late scores. And the NFL was, after the early games not being so good, the later games, Washington was good. Rams were good. So, it felt like a bit of a fix on that LA game, trying to give the city something, moving the game, whatnot. But a couple of questionable calls early on, keeping one West Coast team in the playoffs, I guess. But all in all, green in both states, which is, as I said, not sure it's ever happened, but very rare if not.
Well, Adam, I would have taken a couple of questionable calls in favor of my Chargers, but I'm not sure any amount of fixing would have gotten them to advance beyond Houston this past weekend. So looking ahead to things here, how's the early action looking on your end for the college football playoff championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame, as well as the divisional round of the NFL playoffs?
Yeah, so looking at the charts live, so if the eyeballs go up, I'm looking at it to make sure it's real-time info. Notre Dame has a decent amount of sharp money. Overall, a little bit more on Ohio State, but it's well spread out. I mean, there's plus 10, plus 9.5, plus 9, plus 8.5 on Notre Dame, and then sort of some minus 7, 7.5 that they paid the extra juice for, and some, again, 9, 9.5. So really good action on that game both ways. Sharp seem to be on Notre Dame. I don't know. I just think Ohio State will just do a number on them. On the football, the NFL games, Kansas City and Detroit just been bet heavy. I guess they just think the week rest, they're just going to come out firing. Significant money on those two. I think it's looking at it well over 80, 85% are on the favorites there. Rams-Eagles is probably the lowest bet game. There's not really that much action. And then, again, Baltimore-Buffalo, significant money on it. 66, 70% on the Bills right now. It seems like it's flip-flopped a little bit from 1-1, minus one side back to the other. But yeah, I mean, early on the volume's good. I mean, it's only Tuesday, right? Mm-hmm. So it's surprising the amount of action we have so far so early this week.
All right, well, from a promising amount of early week action and a promising recent bottom line at Prime Sports to a less than promising recent bottom line at the current market leader, our water cooler segment this week, FanDuel has taken a $370 million hit on better-friendly NFL results attributed to parlays and same-game parlays, and favorites covering at the highest rate in almost 20 years. Per a January 7th article in Sportico by Eben Novy-Williams, recent results have had no impact on FanDuel's longer-term business expectations, shared at its Investor Day on September 1st. And on last week's episode of the Zero Latency podcast, host Brad Allen, Eilers and Krejcik analyst Alan Bowden, and former Fanatics SVP of Trading Andy Wright make the case that these negative short-term results are, if anything, a long-term positive for FanDuel and other books, as many existing customers are likely to bet back their winnings. Joe, I'm curious as to how you view the recent rough patch for some of the recreational books out there that are among the leaders in the marketplace.
First of all, I'd like to say I'd really like to have FanDuel's problems today. Boo-hoo for them. But yeah, I heard the podcast, Brad and Alan and Andy, and it's an excellent one. They always seem to do a really good work over there on Brad's podcast. But anyway, like in general, yes, I think it's good for players to win. It would do you no good if betting on sports, people came in, they bet, and it's like you can't beat the game. So anytime the players generally can win and you're returning a decent amount of money to the players, yeah, it helps just that long relationship. If that's what they're trying to do, develop a long relationship with their players. And I can't even believe I'm going to do this. I'm going to reference HBO's series Bookie, which I wasn't going to watch until Chris Andrews told me that, it actually is really good, where the head guy, played by Sebastian Maniscalco, says, think of it like a laundry, except you're going to rob them one shirt at a time or something like that. So that slow burn, that slow accumulation, that's the way to do it. Where I think things kind of go off the rails, and I think there was maybe a little bit of this touched on, but maybe not enough, is in how the product mix kind of complicates that theoretical players playing back the money. And that is because let's just use FanDuel for this one, because FanDuel is so overbalanced on parlay action and SGP action, right? They're offering jackpot, it's not like a player that bets 100 wins 100. So, they're winning even money or maybe a little more or a little less than even money, depending on what the price is, what the juice is on the market they're playing at for single bets. Now they're playing parlays. They're playing it for like boosts and everything like that. These are jackpots. So when a player wins, they're winning big. And, if you have a player that bets $100 and they win $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, absolutely that player, if it's a square, is going to take some of that money out and they're going to spend it. They're not just going to recycle it back into their bankroll and say, all right, I'm going to do this and I'll be able to place bigger bets. They're going to take part of that out. And this is one of the reasons why, Matt, you just got back from Vegas, but whether you're in Caesars or the Wynn or the Venetian or something like that, to make your way out of the casino, you got to walk by all those luxury goods shops. You got to walk by the Rolex guys. You got to walk by the Gucci guys, things like that. So, if somebody takes them for a big win, they're going to make sure that the kind of stuff that people would buy after a big win is right there on campus so that they can recapture that money a little easier. And that's something that FanDuel and the other guys, they don't really have. So because of this, I think the theory about players are just going to play it back takes a hit with that, just because of the jackpot nature of the wins that people are going to be getting with these SGPs. But overall, yeah, absolutely. Alan Bolton was totally right on this. Like, players have got to win. Players have absolutely got to win, or eventually they're just going to drift off and they're going to do something else with their money, particularly these recreational players.
Adam, I'm not sure if you also have a reference from the HBO show Bookie to share with us as part of your thoughts on this topic, but fire away with your perspective as well.
It's the best thing to happen. You'd want these players to win. This is the whole point of it. Let them win, pay them quickly, get them back in, get them betting again. This is just the old school of, let the little guys win occasionally. This is, as painful as this has been, seeing these results, feeling some of these results. And again, we don't feel it as heavy as them because we actually let everybody bet. If they did that as same, they wouldn't have these kind of exposure. But let the little guys win. Let these big parlays hit. Pay them quickly. Get them in and get their money back to them as quickly as possible. And they'll come back just as fast and keep playing. So it's a good way to end the year, in my opinion. Books take a hit. Punters win. Let's continue on.
And continuing on with this show, from a recent past stretch of challenges for market leaders, we've got some upcoming challenges, or perhaps a lack thereof, across the sweepstakes landscape. Our look ahead segment in the January 8th episode of the Unabated podcast, Captain Jack Andrews and Thomas Viola offered contrasting predictions for the sweepstakes operators in 2025. Captain Jack's prediction: the number of sweepstakes operators will increase this year because their legal loophole is too strong for state attorneys general to take on. Regulators don't view it as an affront, and the only offended parties seem to be FanDuel and DraftKings because sweeps operators eat into the share of 18 to 21-year-olds they have through DFS. Viola's prediction, on the other hand, Fliff shuts down. Now, these predictions aren't mutually exclusive, but they are at odds with one another. So guys, jump ball here to both of you. Which prediction do you think is more likely to play out this year?
I think Jack wins this one. I suspect, and I'm seeing more and more looking to go into this space. We've always said from day one that the ones playing the sports harder and pushing the sports are the ones that are ultimately going to run into trouble. I don't think Fliff's going anywhere. Currently, they're not paying their players like they should be, so I guess they're keeping some money to stay open anyway. Their goal is to build a database, get some money out of this, and take a run at it for how many ever years they get. They've still got the casino aspect to it. The sports, they could potentially close that or limit that, but they're still going to have the social casino or whatever they're calling it these days. So I think Jack wins that one for sure, because I just don't see Fliff going anywhere. And more I'm seeing, people reaching out, looking for platforms to go into this space and try and make hay while the sun shines. So yeah, I think that was an easy one to decide which side to align with there.
And Joe, while we had contrasting predictions on that unabated podcast episode, am I safe in assuming we might have a consensus between you and Adam when it comes to what to make of those predictions?
Not quite. What I would say is both of them are correct. However, it's qualified. I think Jack is correct that there will be more brands entering the sweeps market here in the United States this year. However, his notion that the state's attorney generals are not going after this right now because the legal loophole that sweepstakes operators are exploiting is too strong, I think he is where he kind of like exceeded his brief on this one. There's a reason why there's a number of states where these guys don't operate. And that's because they have state laws that expressly prohibit this kind of thing. So the issue that sweeps guys have right now, as all these new operations will flood in, is that they are starting to increase the ire of not necessarily the online gaming industry or the online sports betting industry, but they are really starting to piss off the terrestrial brick and mortar casino industry. The other thing is, I think that there's a possibility that you'll see more entrants that are focused on the casino aspect of it, the softer games aspect of it, rather than necessarily the sports betting aspect of it. As far as Adam mentioned it, Fliff is now limiting payouts to once a month and everything. They're the market leader. That's not really a good look. I can't even begin to guess what the genesis of that decision is for them. I can't imagine that it was an easy one. They had to know that as soon as they made it and as soon as they notified their customers, that thing was going to be up on betting Twitter, lickety split. And it was. So whatever it may be, if Twitter went down tomorrow, there would be other companies there to pick up the slack in the sweeps industry. So I think both of them are right to an extent. And again, this is an industry where I don't have a dog in this one. I do think it's going to be an interesting year, though, in the industry.
And guys, while Captain Jack and Thomas went deep on the future of the sweepstakes betting landscape, there was also a pretty funny tongue-in-cheek remark during that episode that Amazon would be conducive to a betcast for Thursday Night Football, but they need a betting partner, and Prime Sports almost too good of a brand fit if you think Prime Sports on Prime Video. Any initial reaction to that kind of thought?
They're absolutely right. Why do you think we picked that brand name? I can't even believe I can't believe that domain name was available. I would have thought Amazon would have locked it up. We're an AWS customer for like the first year or so when we were negotiating them, and they kept asking us, so what's your brand going to be? I didn't want to tell them because I was like, I don't want to get sued just yet. But yeah, I think we'd be more than happy to step up and fulfill that role for them.
All right. Well, on that note, I think it's going to be maybe our shortest episode to date, definitely our shortest of the year. But to the audience, hopefully you've enjoyed it nevertheless. And whether or not you ever do catch a glimpse of Prime Sports on Prime Video, and however things play out this year across the sweepstakes landscape, thank you, as always, for making us a part of your podcast landscape. Enjoy the divisional round of the NFL playoffs and the college football title game, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at Prime Sportsbook, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.